have a theory that someday maybe people will rediscover classical music and go, this stuff is really great. And they find it on their own rather than having it forced on them by a school or a teacher. And when you find it on your own, that's the best way. This is something I've been working on for 8 years now. I guess I got to a point in my life I just thought that I had said all I wanted to say with lyrics. I may write songs again, I don't know. But for the last 8 years, all I've been writing is instrumental music, and it speaks for me. I'm not as good a pianist as people think I am. For rock and roll, I'm okay. But for classical music, I want somebody really, really good who knows how to find all the nuance and get all the dynamics and get as much as possible out of the instrument. And so someone like Jan Key is perfect.
So, welcome to the OA Music Podcast with a very special guest tonight, or this afternoon. Ever since I started this podcast, I wanted to interview somebody famous. So can you hook me up?
Yeah, I will.
With Billy Joel, or I think he's the guy who can make it happen. I'm here with Jan Key Jew. He's a dear friend, somebody that I've known for the past 20 some years. I'm not going to say how many because it's too many, but an incredible musician, comedian, conductor, composer, educator, you name it. All the things I want to be when I grow up. So I want to start from the beginning, talking to you from the beginning, because when I met you it was 98, 99, or 97? When was this?
97.
97, at Manhattan School of Music.
Yes, maybe. I think
So you were doing your master's? Or?
Yes, I was doing my
You
master's.
were doing your master's, and I was doing my my bachelor's there.
Yes.
I'm much younger than he is. And
You wouldn't see that.
you wouldn't see that, right? Because I've had a very rough life. But so when I met you there, you were already doing some very interesting projects. You were already involved in a very creative life, thinking and playing sort of outside the box. I came from a very strict classical music environment, and you were the guy looking at us from the outside, while at the same time being on the inside. But where did the love of music come from? Is it your family? Your parents were not musicians, right? It's just sort of like my parents. You know, you were born in England. How does that, your background, how did that affect your connection with music? You talk about the fact that, not many Korean musicians were known at the time.
Well, not even musicians, just Korea was not known. No one knew what Korea was. When I was born in the early 70s in England, in a small city called Norwich. So it's not London. And I think my parents were even the first people to open a Korean restaurant in England. I have to double check that, but I think so. If not the first, the second. But, the reason why I went bankrupt because they opened it in a place called Norwich. Maybe in London, it might have done better. But the reason why I went bankrupt was because nobody knew what was Korea. I mean, who knew what was Korea? And now, in 2026, everybody is just asking, where's kimchi? Where's bulgogi? Where's Korean noodles? And let's watch it with Korean drama while listening to K-pop. I mean, it's insane. But back then, nobody knew what was Korea. And so... that's a very interesting question that you asked. Where did my love of music come from? Where does love of anything come from?
Well, did you pick music, or did music pick you? Sort of the question, because I come from a family of mathematicians. My parents are both mathematicians.
Wow.
So they have an affinity for music, but it's not that music. There was a piano at home.
Yes.
So it was there somehow.
Wow.
But when did you realize, well, this is what I want to do, And
in a way, it's lucky accident. So I had very typical Korean parents, Asian parents, especially my father. You know, you must be a doctor or a lawyer
Right.
when you grow up, because those are the only two respectable professions. And musician, forget about it. I mean, that's on the, you know. So I went, and for education.
So they didn't want you to be a musician.
Well, it's not that they didn't want it. It wasn't even in the equation. It's not even, I mean, and it was like I had to study hard and, graduate from Oxford or Harvard. And, when I would come back home with a maths test that was like 90% score, which I think is pretty good. 90%.
Not for Korean.
Not for Korean parents, not for white parents. My father would be like, no, not good. Must be 99 or 100%. By the way, this is not a racial stereotype. My father speaks like this.
Right.
So please allow me the liberty to impersonate my own father.
Right.
All right. Okay. Allow me this, please. Yeah. So, but I do know that, I mean, my parents loved music, and my father had a very open-minded collection of LPs. There was everything from Beethoven to ABBA to Louis Armstrong to Bert Kempert to Tosca from Puccini. I mean, and I would listen to this stuff. In fact, my parents tell me that when I was a kid, I would like put on LPs one after the other. And when LPs need to be handled with care. So apparently a lot of needles, a lot of LPs got broken. But obviously there was this hunger to listen to music. And apparently whenever music was being played, I would dance or be calm or be excited. So they understood this guy likes music. But they never thought about making the connection from this guy likes music to maybe we should give him a musical education. That happened much later. So I started at the age of 8.5 to take piano lessons, which, as you know, for our kind of...
It's kind of late.
It's kind of relatively late and it was my mother's suggestion, because she said, he likes music so much, maybe he should take some music lessons. And she played a little bit of piano.
Did you have a piano at home?
No, we got one just because because I started taking piano lessons, and I think she didn't mind to just tinker a little bit, play some simple chords and sing some songs. So, and as far as I'm concerned, it could have been any instrument. It could have been, I don't know, the oboe, the saxophone, the accordion. I think I just was so in love with this contact with music. And now I could actually move a finger and there was a sound. And so being connected to this was exciting for me. And about 2 years of piano lessons, my teacher had to leave the country. And she summoned my parents one day and said, I think your son has musical talent and he should go to a music school. And I'm leaving the country and I don't want to leave him in bad hands. And my parents must have been very confused, like, what is this lady talking about? But because another thing about Asian parents, or at least my parents, is that they respect teacher. Respect.
Yes.
Must respect teacher. So they gave her they indulged her with this whim that I could be a musician. And she said, I've made arrangements for him to audition at the Yehudi Menuhin School. And we all like, Yehudi who? Who's Yehudi who? And, she explained Yehudi Menuhin.
And that was one of the most important music academies.
Well, we later found out who he was. And so here I am. I'm going to audition at the Yehudi Menuhin School. This was my audition piece. Yeah. See, I'm still working on it. And which is quite rudimentary.
I think for people that do not know, that piece is Bach Prelude in C major, number 1.
Yes, number 1. And
that's actually a very hard piece to audition.
Yeah.
I mean, people think that Actually, you know what? You know, I've been playing these preludes and fugues for a couple of years now,
Yes.
live, and I suffer a lot with that beginning because it's a very hard piece to play evenly and to convey the right kind of emotion and balance so people think, oh, is this so ethereal and so actually it's pretty hard to start.
Well, you're talking on a very high level now.
Right, but I want people to know how
No.
for a child to
Yes.
play this piece, you know, it seems like
It looks simple.
It looks simple, but if you're a child and you play this piece well, people will realize you have talents.
Well, I have a confession to make. A few years ago, I played, I think, 4 two-part inventions for a program that I was doing. And this is where, you know, arrogance gets the better of you. I thought, it's two-part inventions. I played this before when I was a kid, teenager. It's two-part, you know, and as a pianist, you have other stuff to practice, which is like,
Rachmaninoff concerto.
yeah, Rachmaninoff concertos, like 3 million sonata. So it's like, you know, you've got to spend hours just to understand what one bar is.
Right.
And this is Bach two-part inventions. The right hand does one thing, left. It's 2 parts. It's not even 3. It's 2 parts. And so I definitely, you know, underrated the difficulty. And I mean, I will never play two-part inventions ever again.
Well,
It's so hard.
Yeah.
For me.
no. It's incredibly hard to play Bach
It's
because
yes.
you know, I damaged my shoulder playing the Walter Clavier a couple of summers ago because I was playing it, you know, in 1 month I played it like 3-4 times, and I was practicing the piece, the
Yes.
preludes a lot, and fugue. And the problem is that you have 1, 2, 3, 4 voices doing different things.
Yes.
So your body is constantly adapting. And I know we're taking a little detour, but I think this is important. It's constantly adapting to, you know, to where the voice is at the particular moment it is in the middle finger and this finger. So you're constantly, even when you're relaxed, there's a lot of tension that is happening. And on top of that, and this is something that I have talked to other musicians that play a lot of Bach.
Yes.
Bach demands perfection. It's not like if we make a mistake on a Rachmaninoff piece,
Yes.
we sort of improvise and we get
Yes.
around and we stay in the harmony.
Yes.
You can't do that with Bach because you basically screw up the entire piece when there is a little tiny mistake. So we are under, you know, it's like almost like we are under the being looked on a magnifying glass by God Himself. I said, if you make that one mistake, you're done.
Yes.
You know, so it doesn't matter if it's just 2 voices or 3 voices. Actually, 2 voices could be even harder because you have less of that harmonic cushion that you
That's
have in all the composers.
That's
So for a child, I even recommend for children not to start Bach until later.
wow.
Because I find that it's a lot of like, it could be too much, you know. No, seriously,
No, but-
I realize that later.
I'm laughing because I
You
I
know,
know how difficult I
I realize that later.
Yeah.
You know, it could create tensions that
Yes.
are because you're trying to get this voice and
Yes.
that voice.
well, especially if you want to do it well.
If you want to do it well, which
Well.
you know, if you're a talented child, that's what you're going to want to do.
And that's the genius of someone like Glenn Gould.
Yes.
Whether you like his performances or not, I don't think there's ever been, to my knowledge, someone who can convey Bach's polyphony at such an independent, free level where all 3, 4, 5 voices coexist. And he doesn't care about playing the hands together or playing the voices together. He's literally having conversations with 3, 4, 5 people at the same time with the same amount of intensity and attention and respect. And you try doing that just with having, 4 or 5 independent conversations. With one person, you're speaking about, I don't know, Groucho Marx. The other one, you're speaking about politics. The other one, you're speaking about whatever. And free.
Well, then he tried to do that with in his radio program.
That's right.
Tried to do like few conversations at once.
That's right. That's right.
You know,
That's right.
you bring up a very interesting point. I've always wondered, could this be the reason why he decided never to do, at 30 years old, public concerts anymore? Because if you dedicate your life to playing Bach, and he had all the interest, but that was kind of his main interest, playing Bach, and it demands so much. I wonder if this was one of the reasons. I mean, it's easier to get everything done that needs to be done, which is massive, in a studio, without the pressure of, oh my God, I need to perform this fugue in 2 voices, 3 voices. It doesn't matter. Unison. It doesn't matter. In front of an audience. It's not like I can choose one hand. You can do that with any other composer. This is what I tell you all the time.
Yeah.
I can play Mozart Sonata and just like be out there.
Right.
Just, you can't do that with Bach.
That's right.
You have to be,
That's right.
the moment you start like, oh, this is something so beautiful, you're fucked up.
Yes.
Immediately.
I wish you had told me this like about a year ago, because I recently started playing Bach again.
But it is an incredible. You know what I wrote about this because I felt compelled to, because when I played the whole book by memory, I've made mistakes. I've had memory lapse.
Yeah.
And I've sort of talked about that.
Right.
And it's a humbling experience. I cannot expect to play for 2 hours
Yes.
of music and don't make a mistake. I feel like, oh shit.
This is one of the problems with our industry, our profession, our education, is that we have put ourselves in a very small, tight corner, because the way we are taught to learn about music is not to make mistakes.
Yeah.
That seems to be almost the number one priority.
Right.
Instead of like, let's explore the music, let's experiment with the music.
When do you think that started? That kind of mentality? Because if you hear Edwin Fischer's recording of these preludes and fugues, there are mistakes all over the place, even memory, and he's probably reading. They're just like, the recordings are there. They're perhaps the greatest recordings of these people, and yet there are mistakes all over the place. When do you think that started? When did we get so anal about?
I'm not sure if what I'm saying is historically accurate, but I would say that definitely music competitions are to blame.
Yeah.
I think recordings are to blame. And both of those things demanding a certain kind of perfection. And if we speak about music competitions, I mean, how do you really judge one pianist over another? We can have debates about who is the greatest tennis player. Many people would say, whatever, Federer or Nadal or whoever. But the numbers and the statistics show that Djokovic is currently the greatest player, because he's won the most Grand Slams. He's been the most weeks at number one, etc., etc. He's won the most points.
Right.
And in tennis, yes, at the end of the day, it's about points. Do you win that match point? And if you do, you win the championship or you win the game. So this kind of, are you better or not, is very metric. There are metrics to it, and then you can have philosophical conversations that why you think one tennis player is better than the other, even though maybe they never even won a Grand Slam in their life. But with music, you can't really judge. I mean, I would even go so far as to say something like wine tasting. I mean, yes, you have experts. You have sommeliers who are highly trained, but at the end of the day, you either like it or not.
So you're saying that one of the ways for them to judge the winner of a competition is by whoever doesn't make mistakes.
Absolutely.
Sort of like,
because that's a clear metric. Right. Oh, yeah, he played, but he missed 5 notes and he had a memory slip.
well,
Because those are clearly defined metrics by which you can evaluate someone. Because how can you evaluate Glenn Gould versus Edwin Fisher?
yeah.
You can say, I prefer this guy's interpretation. I prefer that person, but then, but Edwin Fisher made 5 more wrong notes than Glenn Gould. That's easily, and then especially if you don't like the way someone played, you can use that as collateral
So I
ammunition to say, I don't want this one in.
I was in Rio de Janeiro many years ago, and a very famous pianist. I'm not going to mention any names.
Just give the first letter and the last letter.
He's
Now we know it's a man.
Yeah,
Now we know it's a man.
he and he's no longer with this.
I would have
I want to respect.
See, I would have said she.
No, it was a he. It was a he.
Yeah, but just to, make
To make it.
even more, because
So-
now you've narrowed it down.
And this is somebody who, by the
And
way,
you said he's
I
dead.
admired a lot,
Okay.
and still admire.
Yeah.
Great guys,
Yeah.
great musician,
Yeah.
especially a great musician.
Okay.
And he came to Rio. He performed a beautiful Beethoven Fourth Piano Concerto, and because he was already, very old, there were some memory lapses and stuff, but everything was, really beautiful. We're having dinner with a group of friends after the performance, and he was, telling a story because he was the judge of many prestigious piano competitions, including the Queen Elizabeth competition. And he said, well, I just came from the Queen Elizabeth competition, and there was a wonderful, wonderful pianist there, but unfortunately we couldn't give her the first prize because at the last round, the concerto round, she had some memory. She had some memory sleep. So that was very unfortunate because she was obviously the best artist, but we couldn't do it. And I tried to control myself.
You want to punch me in the
Yes,
face.
yeah. So, but then I just couldn't. Needless to say, it was not the right thing to say. But I told him, like, Mr. Such and Such, this is very unfortunate because
Totally.
just yesterday you have many memory lapses, and yet your performance
You said,
it's like your performance will forever stay in my heart
wow.
because it was that beautiful.
Wow.
And I would feel very guilty, and I would not be able to live with myself if by listening to something so unique and so beautiful and at such a high level, I have to make a decision to not grant you the opportunity of a career of playing with for other people, or exposing other people to your artistry just because you made a memory mistake. I think he was so upset that when I say so, he's like, I didn't make that many memory mistakes.
That's what he thought.
That's what
Yeah.
he thought.
Instead
I
of,
didn't have any memory.
yeah, of course.
Instead of saying like, "Oh, you're right," or no, I didn't have that many memory lapses. I was like, "Yes, you did.
Yes, you did.
Yes, you did." But that's not the point.
That's not the point.
He
at all.
didn't speak to me
That's not.
for the rest of the dinner, and after that, I think I was on the red list. But anyway,
This is where I think,
but you're right.
but this is where I think where we have been misinformed or we are directed, because music goes beyond the notes, the text, the accuracy, the form, the structure, the analysis. All of that stuff is important and relevant, but when it actually comes down to it, it's I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the energy, the intention, the emotion behind it. That is the thing that actually transcends a listener or not.
Right.
And I have proof of this. When I was a kid, or a younger person, I played a concert for a school for deaf children.
Wow.
And I remember traveling on the van towards this school and going, wait a minute, sorry, what? It's a school for deaf children?
How's that going to work?
How is this going to work?
Right.
They're not going to hear anything I play. This must be a mistake, you know? So I didn't have that much performing experience. And I start playing, probably the because hadn't progressed that much. And yeah. And then suddenly a whole load of people, kids, ran up on stage. And, you know, one of them sat right here. The other one put his head in the piano. Someone went under the piano. People were touching the piano. And I was, of course, a bit intimidated. I was like, what's going on here? I mean, you know, also when you play, you need your space, you know, people like, and then out of the corner of my eye, I saw kids in the audience. They were moving, they were dancing, they were whatever. And then I realized, I don't know if I realized at that moment, but this was clearly for me a sign, proof that music is not something you need to hear. It's not about the notes. It's not about the harmonies. It's not about the perfect balance of voices and the right pedaling and all of that. It's
a form of communication.
far deeper.
Far deeper than that, yeah.
It would be amazing if an audience at Carnegie Hall would react like how these deaf children reacted.
Right.
Because they were feeling the music. They were resonating with the energy, with the vibrations, and clearly it moved them, literally moved them.
Yeah. Well, that's an incredible story.
And that's the power of music. That's the real power of music. And that's something we have to remember. Now, I know you and I and many of us, of course, we strive for this thing that's beyond perfection. You know, of course, we don't want to have memory slips. We want to perform the best that we can. We want to have independence of 4 voices, and we want to have, you know, all of that is legitimate.
Right.
And it's our craft and it's what we study. But at the end of the day, the listener doesn't give a shit.
Right.
Do you give a shit? Really? Well, I mean, you obviously don't, because you said this guy made memory slips.
No.
But it's a performance that you still think about today.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think about, I mean, you can look at the opposite side of the coin. I'm sure there have been concerts that you've been to, I've certainly been to, where the level of execution is at a just ridiculous technological speed and fluency. 1,000 notes in 1 second, all accurate. And you come out of the concert only talking about that. You only remember that.
Yeah.
And you realize you felt nothing.
Mhm.
You went for 10 seconds. Wow, that's very impressive. Well done.
Mhm.
Do you feel anything? No. I've heard amateur musicians playing. Everything was wrong pedaling with, you know, harmonies are just, you know, mixed up with bad pedaling and everything, you know, phrasings all up in the airs. And, you know, as a teacher, you'd have a field day, you know, there's years of work.
Right.
But so moving. Performances I still remember today.
Right.
Interestingly, when I was clearing up my old house, I found programs of some quite famous pianists. I totally forgot that I went to their concert because they didn't move me. I still remember 1 or 2 amateurs that played.
Right.
I don't remember their names, but I remember that moment. I remember that performance because their love of music, their intention, their energy, their wish to express genuine something. It's a bit like, why do we have plenty of, you've seen the movie Love Actually.
Yes. Yes.
So that wonderful story between the Colin Firth character and the Portuguese lady.
Mhm.
This is not fiction. This happens in real life. I've witnessed it. I know people who've fallen in love with each other, who've become married, had families, but when they met, neither spoke the other person's language. So is it just physical sexual attraction? I don't think so.
Right.
You don't neat. Language is useful. It's helpful, right?
Right.
It could be life-saving. You're asking for this and they don't give you something else. But ultimately, we can communicate
Mhm.
if we want to communicate. There's something much deeper,
Yeah.
and it's not this.
Right. So you're an educator. You do a lot of programs with kids. You're doing, master classes constantly. And this is what I wanted to talk to you about your childhood and how you got connected to music, because I think a lot of the way we teach and we
Yes.
communicate has to do with our memories of how we started, what made us fall in love with music, and
Yes.
and we kind of diverged, but I wanted to go back to that now that we're talking about this.
Oh, but I
That's
think this
the life,
this
you know?
example of me playing for deaf school
Right.
is definitely a foundation point in my.
But also, even though it seems like it didn't have, it is a minor detail,
Yes.
the fact that music was present in your home,
Yeah.
even just by way of LPs and needles, and that already is such a huge thing. And
Huge.
I wonder if because people always are constantly trying to find ways to connect people to classical music, and I find that the connection, when it's not there from the beginning with the parents, and something as simple as having a record player and LPs of all these great orchestras and
Yes.
all these great musicians makes
Yes.
a huge difference in the life of a child.
Yes.
And also, it makes the child fall in love with the same things they see the parents falling in love with. And this is something that I have a lot of trouble sometimes conveying to friends of mine. That I want to get my child into opera, so I took her to this, così fan tutte, and it was so long. And I was like, "You were bored?" It's like, "Oh, I was bored to death." I was like, "So was she." you know. But
Right.
but
Very good.
my daughter, she's been listening to opera since she's born, because I played opera at home, and she sees how excited I am about opera, and she sees that I enjoy it so much. So children imitate that feeling of the parents enjoying something as simple as a record player or something like that. So
Yes.
I wonder if, when you have to teach kids, do you also do you put an emphasis on the parents as well? Do you start from the very beginning, or how do you make a child now in your life as an educator as well, fall in love with classical music?
Well,
I struggle with this, so this is why I'm
I think it's if you really care to try and connect with this child or a young person or someone who wants to learn something, and I guess in this case we're talking about music and classical music, you've got to find the hook. Every child is different. Every person is different. And the way you lead them towards it, I don't know, if someone is only eating junk food the entire time, it's not gonna change them if you say, right, from now on we're just eating lettuce and cucumbers and fresh farm to table organic food. You have to find what is their hook. And so if they like French fries, I don't know, I'm just making this up.
no.
But you could say, okay, how about we try a potato that's roasted in the oven, but they're still cut like French fries.
Mhm.
So, you don't like it so much, but let's put, in a burger, you say, you like this relish, you like the pickles. What would happen if we just didn't dress it so much? And maybe slowly they start to find a way to appreciate a burger without tomatoes ketchup or without the bun, or they still have the tomato ketchup, but it's freshly made tomato sauce from the garden.
Yeah.
you know? And so, but if you just go, right now, we're going to change the whole meal plan, then it doesn't work. So if you take a kid and you just throw them in, I don't know, Wagner's
and then the
Siegfried.
child needs to have some guidance, right? Somebody to go there and say, like, well, let's experiment with these because I like it too, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes, maybe it needs to be in a dosage.
right.
Try a little bit of this, try a little bit of that, and somehow make it cool, make it accessible to that kid. What does that kid like? You know, maybe, you know, I sometimes talk about these movies that were made of Shakespeare plays, like Baz Luhrmann or Kenneth Branagh. You know, they did things like Romeo and Juliet with DiCaprio. You know, it's gangsters, right? Now, I'm sure you've got these people in Stratford upon Avon, these, you know, highbrow, that go, oh no, that's not how we do Shakespeare. It should be men in tights, and we say to, yeah. But you know, when you see DiCaprio, and it's like all cool, and it's like car chases, and it's like, oh, Juliet, Juliet, wherefore art thou? You say, what is this?
Right.
And maybe not everybody, but a lot of people go, who is this Shakespeare guy? I want to, what's Leonardo DiCaprio saying? What is this cool gangster saying? I want to find out more. That's the hook.
Right.
Then you get them in, and then they go to the next thing.
Right. Right. Well, you know, I find that sometimes that could be the great way of introducing me classical music to people that have never had that in their life.
There's a lot, sorry to interrupt, there's a lot of classical music in video games, for example, or ringtones. So if a kid likes a certain video game, and very often there's classical music in it, or classical type of music,
Yeah.
you say, oh, you like this? Oh, this is, you know, and then play them separate. I remember my nephew was playing some video game, and there was some Dvorak piece on it, and he even had it as a separate track. I said, what are you listening to? Because he's not like into classical music. He has an uncle who plays classical music, but you know, he comes to concerts, but he's
Right.
more into other stuff. And I said, do you know what you listen to? He said, no. I said, why are you listening to it? He said, I like it. Well, where's it from? He says, it's from this video game I'm playing. I said, well, actually, that's Dvorak. So it's about finding the hook.
Right.
You know what I mean? Sorry,
Yeah.
I interrupted.
Yeah.
you.
No. What I wonder sometimes is that if we, you know, we have a lot of that, and then do you think they will make, you know, the connection, or they will get connected later with the real Shakespeare or with the real Beethoven? Or
Yes, I
you know,
do.
you know,
I think
that's like,
yes, I do.
yeah.
I think there's a real chance. Absolutely. So many of the things, think about your childhood or people that you know very well. You know, I'm pretty sure the first time we were taken to an art museum, we absolutely hated it. It's so
Yeah.
boring.
Right.
You know, you're walking around seeing painting after painting after painting. It's boring.
So what you think is, as long as we are exposing people to this in whatever way possible, we're always doing something good.
Yes, because something germinates, something grows, something you remember something if it's done well.
So that is hard for me to get this, because we are such Puritans because of our background and
Yes.
education.
Yes.
You know, that sometimes I feel from a personal level like, how is this possible? But I've grown to accept that as a real possibility.
Well, think about it as even as yourself as an adult, right? And someone says to you, someone that cares about you says, I don't know what, you should check, you know, you should work out more, or, you know, you should do more physical exercise. The first time they say it is kind of like annoying, leave me alone, you know?
Yeah.
But then one day you'll come across a YouTube TED talk where they'll talk about how, you know, physical exercise helps mental health and well-being and blah, blah,
Yeah.
whatever. And then one day you'll be walking in the park and you see someone attractive jogging, and it all adds up. And then but it all has started as a snowball effect from that very first time your mother said, hey, Orlando, you should work out, you know, annoying mother. But it's, so you need these exposures to this so that it eventually builds up. And
let's jump down to the year 1997, 98, when I met you, high school music. And, you know, one of my fondest memories of you there.
We have.
You won the concerto competition.
Okay.
I'm playing Prokofiev
Third.
third.
Yes.
Piano concerto.
Yes.
And it was so much fun. It was so much fun listening to you. I remember I was there at the rehearsals. We were some friends. Kirill Gerstein was a friend, a fellow colleague there at the Manhattan School of Music. He was there at the rehearsal. I remember, very, very well. He was sitting right in front of me. I was sitting behind with some friends. And you were playing with Commissione, right?
That's right. Sergio Commissione.
Sergio Commissione.
Yeah.
And that was so much fun. I remember how much such a heavy piece
Yes.
felt so light in your hands. And then one of the things that I kept in my mind was like, well, this is very interesting because at the time you were already experimenting with a lot of other things with comedy, and I want to get to that.
Yes.
And I was like, this guy is very multifaceted. He's doing a lot of things with comedy and with duo. At the time you were playing with the challenge.
That's right.
Your comedy duo.
Yes.
He's doing a lot of things outside of the school curriculum. He's not really inside, but yet, he plays for Prokofiev third, the way, we would play it or better even. So, when did you start that? Because already when I met you, you were already in that world of comedy. And why was it a rebellion against classical music, or was it because again, the same question, did you pick it or did it pick you,
Well, that's an interesting question because I would say that humor was a tool for me as a hook. What I just talked about, finding a hook. I always wanted to, I don't like to call it a mission, but let's say one of the things that's fueled me ever since I've been a young teenager at the Menuhin School was how can I make classical music accessible to anybody?
Yeah, but before that, I want to know,
Yeah.
when did you think you were funny? And why did you start being the clown? Because there's something in there that is the same kind of like germ that,
Okay, so
is that a rebellious?
to be honest,
what is it?
To be honest, I don't think I'm funny. I mean, I'm not.
Oh, you're hilarious.
No, I don't. I'm not.
I say that.
No, I'm not trying to be modest now. I'm very well aware that I can be.
For the more reason why I think this is very interesting that you made a career out of this.
Well, if you're speaking about the duo, my duo with Igor Marju,
yeah,
that we now, as the beginning of this year, have retired.
I wanted to get to that.
Yeah, sure.
You can.
But we actually never sat down to say, right, now we're going to make a show that's funny. Right. That was never a priority. Maybe that was on the third or fourth. For us, it was always about the music. Music, first place, must be good quality music, must be played as well as possible. And that was number one. And then if there was some humor and some jokes put in, if people laughed, if people got it, bonus.
라크마니노스 손이 되게 컸습니다. Big hands. 저는 코리아 small hands. But only hands small.
But when was the first time you realized I could do these at the same time that I'm doing my classical music and my career as a pianist? Because you were already doing very interesting process. You could see the path as a career pianist. You were following that path. What made you look into comedy and say, like, I could do this too?
So it's interesting because it goes back to a slightly earlier question or earlier thing you were talking about how parents, what they listen to can have an effect. So what I would say is that the fact that my father had such an eclectic collection of music, I didn't make the genre cupboard placing category of this is classical music, so therefore it's superior, it's highbrow. This is jazz, so it's down there. This is pop, so it's even further down. For me, they're all on the same shelf. And I liked it all. So that definitely is a part of my philosophy and makeup and why I love all kinds of music. And so I never wanted to make that discrimination. I never understood why do classical musicians look down on other types of music. It's the same 12 notes, the same harmonies. And there's such great music that's not classical. I mean, it's, Bohemian Rhapsody, Brad Meldow, whatever. I mean, there's so many we could talk about. So, and that's the same thing with humor. I was lucky that I had, for example, one of my first composition teacher. He was amazing. He's still alive. Simon Parkett, wonderful musician. But he had a fantastic sense of humor as well. And he would sit down and he would go, oh, this is a Grieg concerto in the style of whole tone. Whatever. And improvise all this stuff and do Mozart in the style of Mexican music or whatever. And it was hilarious. It was these finding comparisons. And then, I'd watch things like Monty Python and Oscar Wilde and even Shakespeare. And you saw that comedy, humor, and drama and tragedy, they coexist together. Think about the music of Mozart operas or Rossini. And then, I would see these plays by Chekhov or movies and realize that there is a place for different types of communication, different types of art forms and expression to coexist. And that we were at a time with classical music and we even make smaller niches within classical music. I mean, think about it. We are important as opposed to what Timothy Chalamet says.
Right.
But we are, if we talk about, you know, how many Spotify listeners we have compared to someone like Taylor Swift, we're on the smaller end.
Right.
Fine.
Yeah.
But within that, we make ourselves even smaller. We go,
Yes.
you're a soprano, you're a mezzo soprano, you're a lyric, you're a coloratura, you're a Baroque music specialist, you're a contemporary music.
Paper specialization.
And even within contemporary music, you are accepted because you are a descendant of the hyper serial Boulez, you know, dogma, and you're sort of writing music that has nice chords in it. So you're kind of secondary, you know, you're in that sort of minimalist,
Yeah.
whatever, you know, so you're not really contemporary. You're a pianist, you're a collaborative pianist.
Yes.
You play with singers, so you can't play with violin. It's
So you're not
ridiculous.
soloists.
It's ridiculous.
Right, right. And you know what? The public also has that same attitude, perhaps because we have taught them to have that attitude.
Yes.
So they do. I have another anecdote that I've never told you.
Tell me.
I was in a concert you were playing in this house, and somebody said, you know, Hyun Kee is a very serious pianist. A friend of yours said. He's a very serious pianist, but somehow he decided that he was going to have a career as a comedian. And so, you know, it's very interesting. And then I was like, well, he's still a serious pianist. And I got the same kind of rejection, like, who the fuck are you? Just a friend. Pleasure to meet you. You know, I walked out of there, but that is something that have always upset me. Not only when people talk about you or other musicians, that we put them in a category. I read a recent review of Charles Ives by a very important reviewer and a music critic, and said, well, he was at the end just insurance salesman. I'm like, no, he was a great insurance salesman. Perhaps one of the best there was.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he was perhaps one of the greatest American composers or composers, period. This is a guy who composed symphonies and piano sonatas. Please, let's do respect to the people that have shared and loved something to such a degree that even when they do something else, they try to preserve it just for us and for themselves.
Yes.
So this is something that I wonder if you had struggled with that, becoming such a successful, you know, huge, you know, comedian with Igudesman and Jude.
Yes.
And then at the same time, you know, I'm sure you want to be also respected and admired the same way for what you do as a pianist, as an educator, as a teacher. The other things that you love, that you do, you know, as good or perhaps even better than your comedy. It's not, you know, black and white. It's not this or that. That upset me, you know.
Unfortunately, and it irritates me too,
Yeah.
I must confess, and not just about myself, but about anybody,
Right.
anybody who's categorized. And if you look at any innovative artist, you know, they evolve, they reinvent themselves. And yes, I'm irritated by it too. And I'm very aware of that, that once you play James Bond, you know, you will always get only roles of, you know, secret agents.
You dare to laugh, and that was the end of it. You know, you're there to make fun of something,
Yes.
and then you're not serious anymore.
Yes. But it's actually the opposite. I mean, humor, comedy is such a powerful mirror
Yeah.
of not just society, but of ourselves. And it reveals the real tenderness and the think about Chaplin. I mean, do you think of Chaplin as a comedian, or do you think of him as I mean, he's everything.
He's a great musician.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. And and when you watch his movies, you laugh, but at the same time, you have a tear in your heart.
Yeah. Did you encounter a lot of opposition when you started collaborating with big orchestras all over the world with your duo and doing all of this comedy and trying to get classical musicians to join you in the fun? Because I remember you telling me things that, oh man, with this orchestra it was easy, but then the other orchestra they just wouldn't do it. And
Yes.
how was that experience with then getting the strictly classical musicians, the institutions, to just like have a laugh, just like
Yes.
relax,
Yes.
laugh at yourself,
That's right. That's right. We take ourselves way too seriously for our own good. And it's not good for the audience. It's not good for the listener. It's not good for the music. You know, it's so interesting. It's a bit like what we were talking about earlier, about changing someone's diet from fast food to healthy eating. I remember working with one particular orchestra, and the mood was great. The openness was fantastic, except for one person, the double bass player. He absolutely was not into it. And I learned a lot of things from this experience. It shows you the power of one.
Yeah.
It shows you the power of dark energy. When someone has negative dark energy, it's very powerful. Unfortunately, even in a room full of 100
musicians, yeah.
100 lightful souls. And it's something that I think we need to be aware of if we're talking about the world,
Well, I mean, statistically speaking, criminals and people that disrupt society come from a very, very small percentage of society.
Yes.
And yet they manage to screw it up for the other,
Yes. Exactly.
80 some percent or 90% of the
You
population.
should think about all the cruel dictators
Yeah.
that, we've had and that managed to terrorize
An entire population.
an entire population.
So one bass player
So-
could make
So
your life.
he wasn't having it at all. And it was still fairly on in my experience working with orchestras. So it bothered me, but I had enough maybe experience or wisdom to be like, okay, let's just let him be and try not to let him ruin it for everybody else.
Right.
So at a certain point, decided to just ignore him. Now, we returned to this orchestra 3 years later, I think, 2 or 3 years later. And I remember I said to Alexei, now remember, there's that double bass player. let's just be really nice to him. Let's give him love. Let's not let him bother us. He'll be there. So so we saw the bass player. We're like, yeah, we know he's the one that doesn't like us, that's not into this. So we rehearsed everything. Now comes the concert. And before the second half began, I think it was before the second half, or maybe before the concert, doesn't matter. The whole orchestra was walking on stage. And I think it was a Halloween concert. So people were all dressed up as things. He dressed up as Death.
They're really playing the
With a
part.
sickle and, with the, now, and I thought, well, yeah. And in this scenario, all the players walk on first and then we would come on. So the whole orchestra was on. And then we're waiting in the wings. And then suddenly we hear huge laughter. The audience going crazy. And this is going on and on and on. So then we're like, what the hell is going on? And then we look at the screens. It's that guy. He was entertaining the audience on his own. He was having a blast.
Doing what?
I don't even remember. I was just stunned.
So was it disruptive?
This
too,
guy-
or was it okay?
No, it was fantastic.
Oh,
It was
fantastic.
free.
Okay.
He was enjoying. I mean, from a guy who's like this the whole time during rehearsals and concerts, being the evil emperor, being Darth Vader, to, hey, let's have some fun.
Mm.
I mean, that was a lesson for me that everybody can do their 180 degrees.
Right.
Some people just need time. Have faith and respect.
Yeah. And the power also of what you do as a comedian and how that can really complement the love of classical music, a lot of great music. I mean, there's a huge tradition here. I mean, we're talking from Victor Borge to, which we used to watch together.
Yes.
Students, we used to
Yes.
we used to listen to records. I remember being in your apartment and listening to the Nightingale. What's the name?
Oh, Florence Foster Jenkins.
Yes, Foster Jenkins, and laughing hysterically at
Yes.
those tapes because it was
Yes.
just hilarious.
Yes.
Even though she didn't mean it as comedy, she was very serious about it.
Yes.
But still, those are probably one of the most successful albums in the classical music repertoire.
Yes. And here's another wonderful thing about Florence Foster Jenkins. So she said this beautiful thing, maybe towards the end of her life. She said, people can say I can't sing,
Right.
but they can never say I did not sing.
Right.
And that's another thing that we need to remember
Yeah.
as musicians. Yes, we try to be good, yes, etc., all of that. But at the end of the day, you have to follow your heart. You have to do what makes you tick, what gives you life meaning. And then being good at it is almost, I don't know, it's your own business.
But the great thing about perhaps not her case, but let's talk, somebody like Dudley Moore.
Dudley,
Genius. Genius. I mean,
Genius.
beautiful pianist.
Fantastic.
Fantastic pianist.
Fantastic
I mean,
pianist.
he didn't have a career as a pianist because he was very successful doing something else, and
Yeah.
perhaps that takes a lot of time
Yeah.
to be successful at one thing.
Yeah.
It occupies a lot
Sure.
of your time.
Sure.
The same in your career as a comedian has taken so much of your time.
Yeah.
That perhaps that time you could have employed in your career as a soloist, as a conductor, as a composer.
Yes.
But all of those things take a lot of time and energy from anybody. But Victor Borge, wonderful pianist.
Yes.
Danny Kaye
Yes.
was an incredible performer. I mean, there is the Marx Brothers. I mean,
Oh, are you kidding?
I was
I mean, the way that Humble plays harp and Chico plays the piano, they've tried to do some things.
It's crazy.
It's virtuosity at
It's
the
beautiful.
highest, at the highest. And also they make it look so easy.
Yeah.
But I'm not a comedian. I don't think of myself as a comedian. And again, this is not modesty. It's just, I'm a musician. I'm a classical music nerd.
Right.
I get excited by going to a library, or Tower Records doesn't exist. I used to spend hours in Tower Records, just listening to stuff, looking at stuff. I want to read books. I could. This is enough for a whole lifetime.
Right,
Just this one book here.
Yeah.
This, if you said we're going to get rid of everything else in the world, a bit like the movie Yesterday, but we'll keep this.
Well, that's what Bach said about this. You can burn everything else I ever made, but let's keep this. Yeah.
This is enough for a lifetime of searching, of happiness, of contentment, of exploration, of learning. This is enough. This is for us enough.
Right.
So I'm a nerd, and the humor was just a tool, one of the tools to make a concert more accessible and more relatable, and to bring people closer to classical music, to have that hook and to convey certain ideas, because satire, irony, slapstick, a lot of, they can express ideas maybe clearer than just a straightforward interpretation.
And now, Mozart. Sorry. Could we play this today in A majeur?
But this is Mozart alla Turca in A minor.
Yes, I know that.
Well,
Look where we are, man. We're in the Ahoy Rotterdam. I mean,
so what?
listen to them. I mean, look at their happy faces. Everyone's in a good mood. The feeling is very positive. The feng shui here is A majeur. Come on, let's play in A majeur. Come on. Yeah. Sorry.
Come on, what is it? I mean,
Sorry, it's better, but it still needs to sound Oriental. Turkish, Arabic, Jewish, Yiddish, Chinese, Asian, you know, yin yang, tai chi, sing tao, ping pong.
Well,
Look,
I don't get
the
it.
B's which you're playing, the note B, yeah?
Yeah.
You're playing it too high. This is where you feel your B's.
Yeah.
I want you to feel your B's lower. Open your chakra. Come on, you can do it. Open your chakra. Let the energy flow from within. Stick your tongue out all the way. Breathe in and out quickly with your pelvic muscles. That's it.
Okay, come on, this is ridiculous. I'm sorry.
Okay. Just play B flat instead of B. B flat instead of B. Yeah, go on. Yeah, again, B flat, B flat, yes. Breathe.
Well, look where we are today. I mean, the biggest communicators in the world right now are comedians.
Yeah.
People with the biggest podcasts,
Right.
with the biggest audiences that can, you know, their political opinion or their opinions about anything from
And look what we're trying to do. We're trying to censor them and trying to oppress them.
Well, I mean, sometimes because they're a comedian and not a politician or not a health, you know what I mean? Sometimes we get our hands in too many jars, because, you know, especially people that become very, very famous and
Influential,
very
yes,
influential.
yes.
Then you think that you know about everything,
Yes.
and you really don't. But
Yes.
but still,
Yeah.
to your point, how come these people that started their life as comedians have become such influential people in society at large for everything? I mean, these are the people that have the biggest audiences
Yes.
over
Yes.
huge network channels
Yes.
and
And
that's-
yet it's the most one of the most underrated and undervalued thing.
Yeah.
Think how many comedies have won Best Picture Oscar. Think how many comedic actors
Yeah.
have won Best Oscar. Think how many comedy albums that have won Grammys that we talk about.
Mhm.
You know, you're not supposed to laugh at a funeral, make jokes at a funeral.
Right.
But if you're at a funeral and someone can make everybody laugh, that's golden.
Yeah.
That's healing.
Yeah.
Laughter, Victor Borge said, laughter is the shortest distance between two people.
Right.
You know, and there's things like laughing yoga. I mean, this isn't just some woo-woo stuff. I mean, laughter brings all those wonderful hormones and endorphins and brings you to a much more positive. They've done experiments where they've, before people had to take some exam, mathematical or problem-solving exam, they put half this study group watching comedy, in 20 minutes of comedy, and the other watching 20 minutes of horror movies. Who do you think did better in the exams? The ones that watched the comedy. I mean, there's scientific data to prove that laughter is great for you. One of the things is that the brain does not recognize the difference between fake laughter and real laughter. So even if we now started going and faking our laugh, the brain goes, "Oh, we're happy," and sends all the right signals to be happy
Right.
because we're laughing.
Right. I mean, this is, I want to continue with this, but I want to go back a little bit.
Yeah, you
Those are-
direct me.
Yeah, no, because there is a connection here with the connection with classical music, and that time where I met you at Manhattan School of Music, you were already doing all of these things with comedy, but you were also, I remember when you started working on the project with Billy Joel to record his piano music, and that turned into then the album, the Fantasies,
Fantasies and Delusions.
and Delusions, which was a hugely, it was #1, the Billboard classical music. And,
Well,
right, I mean,
it helps to be Billy Joel to be #1.
right, it helps, it helps. But I mean but I remember from that time, I would go to your house and you would tell me like, "Oh, I just got off the phone with Billy, and we were working on this piece, and I'm trying to, so then you will, the piece looks like this, and now we're trying to make it to do it like that." So what a wonderful thing that somebody who is, probably one of the greatest rock stars of all time, relies on this young guy to guide him through this process of classical music. I mean, that is a testament to your seriousness about classical music.
And he viewed my comedy stuff too.
Right. That's why I wanted.
He came to my shoot comedy shows, but that didn't stop him from
Right.
trusting me more.
Perhaps it helped.
Oh, I don't know.
It helped because I think perhaps what you saw in you was a great communicator. And at the end of the day, when you see this guy on the stage, you see somebody like Billy Joel on the stage.
Yes.
You on the stage, you're seeing a great communicator at work.
Yes.
And that is eventually, the ultimate thing,
Yes.
like you said, you want people to react to a great communicator. So,
Yes.
he's not the greatest pianist or the greatest cellist. Sometimes that communicates the best,
Absolutely.
Much more so I think perhaps he saw that.
And, go back to the time of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Had he written Uptown Girl, it would have sounded something like this. That would be Willie Amadeus Joel.
I wrote that. This is the last piece on the Fantasies and Illusions. It's Air, called Air, subtitled Dublin-esque.
Well, going back to when I played for those deaf children at the school, do you
Right,
think they knew the
right.
difference between me and
Right.
Fisher?
Right.
Do you think they cared? No, not at all.
So I mean, you did an amazing job with this album, and for people that haven't heard this, I would encourage to go and listen to it on Spotify or Amazon, wherever you get your music, because it's so. It's a strictly, classical music album. It's no crossover. You're not doing it's a strictly classical music album that you sort of crafted and created in collaboration with one of the biggest stars of the music world, rock
Yes.
or wherever.
Yes.
And the result was something really magical, something really, really beautiful, and a lot of people were very receptive to it. I thought even the classical music world, that decision were so
Yes.
stuck up. I thought people were receptive to it.
Yes. I mean, that's, again, an interesting thing. There's an example of Billy Joel, who's known to most or made his life career success from the pop rock world, from the singer-songwriter world. But does that mean he cannot or should not write pieces without words and that are not in the songwriting form? I mean, who said he has to only write 3.5-minute songs
Right.
with a drum beat? I mean, he's a musician.
Yeah.
And he can tap into any music he wants. And actually, in Billy's case, he was always a big lover of classical. Classical music is his first love and his real love.
Well, I wonder if perhaps this had something to do with the reason why he became such a huge star. It's this kind of people that have that germ. You hear in Paul McCartney, you hear in,
Yes.
in the great, Sting, great musicians.
Yes.
That classical music, Elton John, or
Yes.
that classical music, seed is there.
Yes.
So I think that's perhaps what helped him become what he became somehow.
I mean, the album Fantasies and Delusions is an absolute homage to all the great classical composers who he admires. And from the first moment I met him to almost the other day when I met him, we usually just talk about classical music. He's also a classical music nerd.
Right.
He only listens to classical music. And he knew that he wasn't a trained classical music composer. He knew that he was out of his, comfort zone and that he would be probably slated by the classical music critics. But he had this music within him and he wanted to pay homage to Beethoven, Chopin, Schumann, Debussy, the music that he loves. And he wasn't trying to be like them. He just was channeling this part of him that resonated with these great composers.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't care if this is going to be successful or not. I need to do this.
Yeah.
But it's the most meaningful album to him. He's said that in several interviews. He said that this album, Fantasies and Delusions, is the most him. He says it's the most me. It's the closest thing to me that I know. And it's his most personal album.
Right. I love the documentary. You're in the documentary as well.
The
Billy Joel documentary
It's
was
a great documentary. And so it goes.
Such a great,
Phenomenal documentary.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why it's so great is when the writers and producers approached Billy, if they could go ahead with this, Billy said, on one condition, that you tell the truth.
Mm.
And I think that's what's so great about documentaries, because a lot of it's not very flattering. I mean, it's very revealing.
Right.
But that's what makes it so human.
Yeah.
And I mean, kudos to Billy for agreeing and allowing his successes and his lows
Right.
to be so publicly exposed.
Yeah. And kudos to him also for being so brave and expose himself to a world that usually would just match you and criticize you
Yes.
for not being part of that world.
Yes.
And just and picking somebody like you who is so irreverent as well, which I think that's a key to the success that you've had.
I'm irreverent, but with the greatest love and respect
Yes.
for
Yes.
what's come before me.
Yeah. So before we end,
Yes.
how?
We probably didn't even talk about anything you wanted to talk about.
No, I actually, you know what? I usually when I've, since I started doing this kind of podcast thing, I usually prepare a lot
Yeah.
for these and write things down. I have like a bunch of papers.
Yeah, where are your notes? Come
Well,
on.
no, because I wanted this to be from my personal perspective and a conversation with you through the years, because I've seen all of the things that you have done and I followed that from a personal perspective. So I don't really, I don't really need to go to Wikipedia. You know what I remember when you were talking about this, I remember you said to me one day, let's go to East Hampton this weekend. I'm gonna play a little concert at Billy Joel's place in the Hamptons of this music, and let's go do this. And I was so excited. I, we got to the Hamptons to a friend of ours that had a house there, and then you called that you have appendicitis. You have your surgery, so we had to cancel the concert, and I was very upset. I was not as upset about you almost dying.
Yeah, apparently I was about to almost die.
How
They
crazy.
said they said it was a ruptured.
Rupture? Yeah.
Yeah, ruptured.
You had to go to an emergency.
I had to go to emergency. Yeah.
So you not only had to go to an emergency, you ruined my chance of, seeing that concert and meeting Billy Joel in person. So Billy, if you're listening to this, give me another chance.
I'm sorry. That was also a concert that was organized by Ron Delsner, who there was just a documentary made about him.
Okay.
And since I didn't show up, he's never spoken to me again since then.
Well, but obviously you didn't show up for a good reason.
I'm half.
So you have to.
Who knows? But the point is, yeah, I was of course upset that I couldn't do that concert.
This is no chance to show them your scar.
I do. I have it. It's not a very pretty scar. Where is it?
It's all hair.
I'm not going to show.
Okay, don't show it now.
No.
It's below the belt.
Yeah,
We'll do that later.
Yeah.
I'll take a picture. But anyways, so now, so
yeah, I'm
okay.
sorry. My ruptured appendix ruined you.
Ruined it. I was like, but he's dying. I was like, I don't care. Can he make it? but obvious to say that, I wanted to come at this from a personal experience, just me talking to a friend that I admire and have the utmost respect for. And, but I wanted to ask you, now that you have come to an end of that cycle with the duo, with
Yes.
Lunas Man and you.
Yes.
So that aspect of your life, the comedic aspect of your life, where is that going? And what are you doing now that you're focusing more on? I've seen concerts, with orchestra, solo, lectures. What's happening now? What's the future?
Well, I spent the last 21 years, very focused on trying to make classical music accessible to as many people as possible, using humor, using theatricality. And now, and over those 21 years, it's not like, as you say, I was just doing this one thing.
Right.
I was still playing chamber music and concertos, but the balance of it, the ratio is now going to be very different. It's not that I'm going to be Jekyll and Hyde, and I still have a sense of humor.
Right.
And things that I compose, I'm a composer too.
Right.
So in things that I compose or in projects that I curate or design, humor will be an element because it's a part of me. It's a part of the way I see the world. But I am doing more things that are, like recently I played Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto
Yeah, sure.
with Deutsche Kammerphilharmonie Bremen, and I just played a few recitals where I played Bach and realized,
How difficult. Yeah.
how difficult it is. I have a new project coming up called Piano versus Orchestra,
Mhm.
which I will do with the Beethoven Orchester Bonn, which is a infotaining concert with a narrative. It's basically charts the evolution and history of the keyboard from its very humble beginnings as a continuo in a concerto format or whatever, recitative, to becoming a worthy contender, David and Goliath, the piano concerto, arena situation. And then finally, in the end, being a part of the fabric of the orchestra and being a timbre and a collaborator. And so this is my project, Piano versus Orchestra, and that's also where I bring the genre of pianism to a different kind of, because people just think, oh, if you're a pianist, you either play as accompanist or you play a soloist or you, so in this you have everything. I mean, I'll be playing the continuo part, I'll be being the soloist, I'll be the conductor soloist, and I'll also be the left-handed pianist, and I'll also be the symphonic pianist, the one that's playing the little chords, the little timbres, the cherries on the cake of, you know, all these composers like Copland, Shostakovich, Prokofiev, Bernstein. I mean, Bernstein uses the piano so beautifully in his symphonic works, but it's not used in a solistic way. So that's why, and it will have some humor in it.
Yeah.
And the humor comes from real life. The show starts with Bernstein's speech about Glenn Gould, which in some ways is funny. You know, if you know which speech I'm talking about, where he just comes on and basically this is Glenn Gould running for his belt player. You know, we don't agree on anything, and we, you know, good luck to what you're about to hear, kind of thing.
That was before the Brahms piano.
Yeah, and he starts off by saying, "Who's more important, the conductor or the soloist?" You know,
They're very philosophical about it.
Yes, and to reenacting moments like the famous moment between Barenboim and Mater. You know, that where Barenboim was sitting at the piano, he was adjusting his stool, he wasn't ready, and Mater didn't bother to look to see when he's ready, so he went bam.
Great country.
No, Schumann. He went bam, and then Baron was like, you know, and so Barenboim was like, okay, I'll get my revenge. And you know how the second movement starts of the Schumann piano. So the first movement is finished. I don't know if he's genuinely pissed or just jokingly pissed, but he gestures to Mater to come over, you know, hey, Zubin, can you come? I said, yeah, okay. And Zubin's like, what's the problem? And as Zubin is here away from the phone, he goes, yeah, no, I've spoken to Mater about this. This is real. This is not urban myth. I
mean, they were such close collaborators and friends. I wonder if it's just like a joke that he plays.
So there is humor in classical music. It's not mine. It's Mater's and Barenboim's.
Yeah.
And so also showing how that antagonism of conductor and soloist is it. So it's not like I'm not going to be humorous anymore. That's like saying, you know, so Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven are not going to be humorous anymore. Yeah. But I'm dedicating myself more to the essence of classical music. It's like, I don't know, it's like before I was making perfume and now I'm making oil extract. And as I told you, I could spend the whole, you know, my whole
it's like the Buddha would say, everything has become one. So I think this would be a good place to close the conversation.
Yeah, it would be a good
place. Yeah, because I think everything has become one. And I predict that your career is going to take another dimension now that is going to be even bigger than what you have done already. And, you know, I think you're in for a fantastic ride now in your new.
Thank you so much.
In your new facet now as a musician, composer, conductor, músico, poeta y loco.
Música, poeta y loco. Sí.
Thank you, my friend.
Hey, thank you so much, man.
What a pleasure.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for listening. Well, this was fun.
You made it fun.